All right. Just for those of you that may have joined us, my name is Michael Clark, President of the Conference of Consulting Actuaries. I'm joined today by Rob Bacher, who's a Fellow of the Conference of Consulting Actuaries, and we're talking today about his experience in non-traditional actuarial roles. Rob, for this next set of questions, I really want to get you to talk about that, maybe compare and contrast being on the consulting side versus on the client side, since you've had the opportunity to do both. Can you compare and contrast for us the pros and cons you see working as a consultant versus working internally?
Sure, Michael. I actually personally see a lot of similarities between the two. Top of mind for me is relationships and building trust matter. So maintaining those relationships throughout and creating them is very important, both on the consulting and corporate side. Communication skills, although we're very analytically inclined, I think being able to, in both instances, bring it to the right level and articulating your point of view. If you're meeting with the CEO, you don't want to have a 20-page deck, for example. You might have a 1 or 2 slides up front, and then you might have a backup where you'll refer to if needed, but you need to be able to communicate your skills to the right audience. Learning about the business. I think, again, in the corporate and consulting space, that's critical. Understanding where your client's going or where your company is going is important. So that, again, a lot of similarities there. In terms of differences, I think probably the biggest one that I kind of get a chuckle over is no longer having to do timesheets and collect bills. Definitely a different mantra there, but with that said, I mean, there's no selling per se, but within the corporate context, you do need to prioritize on what to focus. So again, you can't do everything for everyone. So what do you need to prioritize within a corporate setting? Because you do have a confined sort of set of resources to work with, including yourself. On the corporate side as well, I find that I was able to, or I was engaged much earlier in the process on confidential projects. So again, when it was something important for the business, often I found on a consulting side that that was something that perhaps came down the pipeline a little later once they were more comfortable with where things were at. So, and probably one of the bigger things that's a different perspective for me, and I probably would do things differently now on the consulting side, knowing what I know, is asking and talking to management or whoever you're working with, what level of precision or accuracy are you looking for? So I had no trouble going to the CFO, for example, and saying, look, I can do something quick and dirty for you, but is that what you need? And more often than not, that's all they were looking for, either the bookends or, you know, P50, things like that. So being able to have that exchange on the corporate side and feeling comfortable, I think that's more of a relationship thing that you build over time. So.
No, but I can see the value in that as well, as far as the making you a more effective consultant when you're able to see kind of what those decision makers within an organization, the information they really need to be able to make informed decisions for the benefit of their company, right? I'll go back to something you mentioned, and it's something that a friend of mine who started out as a consulting actuary and then went in-house for a firm, she said one of the biggest kind of eye-opening experiences she had was being able to distill your message down to that one slide, thinking about what's going to get in front of the CEO or CFO or even the board for that matter. Can you maybe elaborate on that for a little bit, just in terms of what you saw and why that was such an important thing to be able to do internally when you were, you know, presenting to that group, or and then maybe how you've seen consultants either approach that differently? Because as actuaries, we tend to like to show everybody all of the pieces that go into things, and sometimes that can end up in a large presentation, but really distilling that down into to one slide is an important skill, I think, as a consultant.
Yeah, no, I agree, Michael, and really I think for me it's getting a level of comfort that they're hiring you as a consultant and they trust you. So being comfortable that you're moving all this stuff into the backup, as we refer to it on the corporate side, that it's there if we need it, and being able to really bring succinctly what you recommend and what the options are that you explored and why you're picking the recommendation over the options really is kind of the key critical messaging you need to get to someone like a CEO or CFO. They have so many different things that they have on their plate. they may be well versed in the topic that you're going to talk about or not, but they really just want to understand what you came to, what your conclusion was, why you did to some level. And that comfort of trust is what they need to have. And I think that's really, and I think actuaries need to be more trusting of themselves and what they've done. I know we caveat everything, which makes sense to a degree, but again, I think being more succinct for the audience is important, and we're all smart. I don't think we need to prove that to people per se. I think if they ask questions, we need to be able to back it up, but I think I prefer taking that approach of making it simple, understandable, and then talking more if needed.
So we had a question come in related to this that I kind of expounds on this topic. Do you have any tips for translating very technical results into easily digestible, understandable concepts for a client, especially when you start thinking about presenting to more senior people within a company?
Sure. So, tips are kind of just think about what resonates with you and make it into a story. When I joined my last employer, and I got offered the job on the spot, so I must have did something right. But ultimately, he asked me a question about, well, what's all this non-discrimination testing stuff that we need to go through? And he's heard the complex stories. And I said, look, honestly, it's really around making sure that you're not providing people that are in a more, financially favored position and providing them with a benefit that's more significant than others. So again, he understood the concept then much better than that. It's really dealing with compliance and rules again, so that you're in a tax-favored vehicle, and ultimately that there's rules to kind of mitigate people from putting more money in that are more highly compensated. So again, just making it into a story that kind of resonates with them from a business perspective. I don't know if that helps or not.
Yeah, it goes back to what you said earlier too. You have to put in the time to understand their viewpoints, their business, what those key topics are, and to be able to translate what we're doing into what they need to see.
Right.
Yeah. So in the different roles that you've played at organizations, did you ever run into situations where you didn't know what you were doing?
Yeah, definitely. Some of it kind of lent itself around not sure exactly what they were looking for. I think that's a big part of the problem or challenge. And they're not often necessarily sure what they are looking for. So really seeking clarification, getting agreement on expectations. I think that's important to, again, have that dialogue and communications early on and continuously. Don't just necessarily assume or think you know what they're looking for. I think it's worth taking that time, having that dialogue. They'll appreciate it. It'll hopefully end up in a better result for you as well. But there are occasions, actually a fair number, where you just don't know exactly how to approach the problem. And I think that, for me, Michael, is really where it's important to make sure you have a good, strong network of folks, be it both internally, if you're on a corporate side or in a consulting firm, and externally. When I was in consulting, I would talk to people I knew outside of consulting and talk to them about, what are you doing in this space, or what are you doing? I mean, consulting firms will typically do surveys and get some data points, but honestly, I think having those off-the-record discussions sometimes are much more meaningful. Same on the corporate side. It's knowing who to call at XYZ company that might be facing that same challenge or situation. Or again, I've leaned on a lot of my consulting friends that have been great to kind of help and step up and share their views on how to approach different things. So being a good detective is also good. Being able to Google and find different public information, I think, is a good skill to have as well. I keep telling my kids, go search on the internet. So.
Yeah, no, I think you've highlighted a really key thing there with the networking aspect of things. I know for me, at least, I think early on in my career, I viewed networking as something that people did as a way to transition to another job at some point. But it's so much more than that. I've come to appreciate that as well, that it is about learning different perspectives and different viewpoints on things. And that's made me that much better of a consultant, I think, from having those different viewpoints that you might not get otherwise, because either the viewpoint's dictated by your own small sphere of contacts, or even from the company that you work from, and not being able to get outside viewpoints or opinions. So I really appreciate that. Rob, what advice would you have for actuaries that are looking to do something different with their career path? You've obviously had opportunities to do that. So what advice would you give those actuaries that are looking to potentially go down a similar path?
Sure. So this is me personally, but I'll steal from Nike. Just do it. Seriously, if you have a passion for it or you feel it's right, give it a shot. From my perspective, it's much easier to do it when you're younger, before you're, in my case, married with children. You become a little more risk averse, I think, in terms of some of the things that you're willing to try to go there and try, perhaps, relocating isn't necessarily an easy thing to do with your family. So again, I would say, if you feel that it's right and it's something that you have a passion for, just do it. And if it doesn't work out, you learn from it and you move forward. Something I saw recently on some session was this concept of triple F, fail forward fast. So again, it's not bad to fail. It's the only way you really learn, and then move forward fast and keep going.
No, that's excellent advice. From your viewpoint, what do you see as the opportunities for people with an actuarial skill set kind of outside the traditional actuarial roles?
So I think there's a lot of opportunities there. I shared this earlier. I think data analytics and AI is huge. I don't understand why data scientists are the ones that are talked about all the time. I think actuaries have the skill sets to do it myself. I think we're looking at that as a profession in terms of expanding that area. Anything to do with data, I think, honestly, is something that is a natural sort of fit for actuaries. I'm not quite sure exactly how this goes, but again, everything we deal with around is risk and quantifying. So data privacy and cybersecurity are an area that I kind of have an interest in, and understanding where that might go, perhaps, with the actuarial profession. I think broad business in general, there's a lot of applications where you could use your actuarial skills and perhaps go down a different path. I mean, where I was previously, we had petroleum and chemical engineers that became the CFO and CEO of the company. So again, that mathematical sort of mindset can lead you into a lot of different paths. An area I think that's important as well, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done here, I think, is around financial and retirement planning. I think there's definitely some stuff that's being done there, but what can we do as an actuary to help promote that some more and help build a stronger foundation for people to be able to retire more effectively?
We had another question come in that's related to this. How do you recognize the right moments when you're trying to develop team members on new opportunities or challenges?
I think, from my perspective, and this has evolved, Michael, you need to really know your team. You need to have some meaningful discussions with them, be there for them, be supportive, understand what they want. And don't just assume just because they're in this part of their career that they don't want to challenge, or that because they are in this career, they want to challenge. I've had different people that made me kind of feel like, wow, I didn't even get that from you. So having that dialogue with them, doing it frequently, things change. So again, I think just being in tune with your team, working with others in other teams as well to see where we can do cross-developmental things, I think is important as well, because again, you can bring different perspective going from a traditional role into a non-traditional role, perhaps, that can help immensely for the business. So I think no limits are off hold there.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. You touched on this in an earlier segment, but I'll have you elaborate on it a little bit more here. How have you seen the importance of what we call soft skills, leadership skills, consulting skills, however you want to brand it? How have you seen the importance of those skills, though, come into play in the different roles that you've had throughout your career?
Yeah, so this is a big one for me. I think, again, as I've grown as an individual, this is probably one of the most important things that you need to be successful in all aspects of your life, be it personal or professional. Relationships matter. Taking the time to really build those relationships, nurture them, keep them going. It doesn't mean it has to be every day or every week. Sometimes it might be years before you catch up again, but helping others, kind of making it mutually beneficial. It's important. Leading a team, it's critical. Getting alignment with others without authority, it's important really to have that sort of skill to be able to listen, learn, get alignment, pre-meetings, as I would call them, making them part of the process to develop the recommendation is important. Even though you know where you want to go, having them as part of that exchange and dialogue early on, it takes time, but they're part of that process and they really own it. Emotional intelligence, EQ, I talked about. being important. There's a lot of great books out there on that. So I would encourage all of you to really take a look at that. I see the technical skills actually as foundational, and these other soft skills really critical to be able to bring your best, be it in a corporate or consulting setting.
No, that's great advice. We had another question come in too, going back to some of the comments you made about the opportunities for people with an actuarial skill set. How can actuaries set themselves apart or stand out from regular data analysis specialists?
I think some of it's up to the different organizations that help brand us and bring that awareness. As an individual, you can do it getting onto different projects or different tasks or situations that might present themselves at the organization you're at. It's not an easy, there's no solution, I think, that I can come up with top of mind other than really getting out there. Thought papers, I could see different things that you're looking at, different perspectives that you share, but you need to be able to bring your point of view out and differentiate yourself perhaps in a way that makes you unique in how you look at things.
No, that's excellent advice.